And so, welcome everybody. Delighted that you're here. We are going to move forward in this conversation about first century Aramaic forgiveness, and in particular, we're into the power person dynamic that you know that basically runs the world. And what we're looking to do, most people have been converted. They have been converted to being very devout, committed, card carrying members of the one world universal religion of blame. And the number one dogma of that religion is I do the behaviors that my power person did to me that I hated the most when I'm ultra stressed. And what we're looking to convert you, not to any church, nothing to do with churchianity, nothing. But what we're looking to do is if you've been converted from the love-based being that you were created as into an hostility and fear-based blame religion, then we're looking to convert you back to experiencing yourself and life around you as the active presence of love, and knowing that the only person who isn't functioning as the active presence of love is someone who's been converted into that other church. It's not that they're bad, it's not that they're wrong, it's not that they're evil in the sense of the world evil. If you look at the Aramaic meaning of the word evil, yes, there are many evil people. What does that word mean? Well, it's an archery term. Hand in hand with the word sin, which if you're on the archery range and you fire at the target and you miss the bullseye, the scorekeeper yells sin, you're off the mark. Then when you fire at the target and you miss the target altogether, the scorekeeper yells sin. In other words, yells evil. You've missed the target altogether. So an evil person is one who has forgotten who they are as love. And if someone's forgotten who they are as love, extend some of yours to them, because we live in a world of resonance. Those locked and lost in hostility and fear, punishment, hurting people who hurt people, if someone just shoots back hostility, fear, and more hurt, it just drives them deeper into that energetic pattern. When I choose to own what's going on inside of me and realize that if I'm locked in some form of hostility or fear, then I have work to do. I want to do the work of converting my own mind back to a device that is based in love rather than hostility, fear, and blame. So that's the bottom line project that we're engaging in. And in our codependence to interdependence intensive workshop, we bring out this power person dynamic, and just to recognize that the human mind, you'll hear me use the word a lot, is a replicate device. That means all it can do is replicate or replay whatever's in it. You, however, don't have to live a replicate life. If you are lost in your mind, and to heal, you've got to be out of your mind. If you're lost in your mind, then you live a replicate life. And, there's a book about that replicate life thing. It's called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? I just happened to write it. Feel very, what should I say? I feel very blessed that the universe reserved that title for me because it's such an obvious one. But you're not designed to live a replicate life. However, if you never wake up beyond the mind, if you never have the tools with which to remove from your mind those highly charged emotional traumas, then the tendency is to live out that replicate game. So, for instance, if your relationship with your power person was adversarial, then the tendency will be for you to create relationship where, I'm in love, I love you, but soon the honeymoon is over or spoken, and it's an adversarial relationship. And that's because you're experiencing it through your mind. rather than through the truth of who you are. So the objective is to get to the truth of who we are as human beings and function out of original choice. There's a lot of focus in the churches about original sin, like let's rub your nose in it. But they forget to talk about original blessing. At the first breath you received, you were given a human life. You were given to be the active presence of love. If your relationship with your power person was adversarial, then your mind will generate perceptions where your relationship with your spouse will tend to be adversarial. And the tendency will be, when living out of the replicant mind, to react to them in the same quality of seeing them as enemy as your power person did with you. And of course, that will tend to be, we tend to create relationships. We have a workshop called Healing Through Relationships. That'll be part of the intensive coming up that we're going to do in the last week of May here in Virginia. But the tendency will be to simply play out those dynamics where in relationship, you find someone in what the world calls love relationships, by and large, are relationships based in matching bags of garbage. In other words, if I've been raised in a household with an adversarial relationship with my power person, then my mind will tend to replicate, will find someone with whom I can have an adversarial relationship. And they'll tend to have the matching bag of garbage. So if mine is the adversarial game, then they'll tend to have the abandonment issue. Gotta leave. And, these dynamics run generation after generation after generation. Carl Jung had a very powerful statement to make. And what he said was, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. The passing down of this power person dynamic, the intergenerational transmission of unresolved wounds, the emotional, the psychological, the nervous system dysfunction and trauma that is unresolved by one generation is energetically, literally, genetically passed to the next generation, and then in the environment is played out, is modeled. And so those energetic patterns tend to become reinforced. Now, in some circles, this is oftentimes represented, the generational trauma is represented as, the impact of something like war, genocide, famine, but it doesn't have to be that dramatic. It can simply be the genetically inherited living out of the unresolved pain of the parent, out of the fears, the hostilities, the behaviors, and the acquired addictive habits that were modeled by the power person, literally that were passed on genetically. Remember that, we are energetic beings, we're not physical beings. And as energetic beings, everything that we engage in, every energy that comes to us is stored holographically in every cell in the structure. And every cell means right down to and into the genetics. And then again, played out environmentally, those energetic patterns tend to become deepened. So when we see generations of people who have no tools, there are high rates of self-abuse, abuse of others, substance abuse, mental health issues, suicide, arrested psychological development, cancel all this. But unfortunately, if one generation has any of these dynamics, it will tend to express. Sometimes it'll skip a generation, but it'll tend to express in the next generation. The dysregulation of emotions, emotional withdrawal, the inability to express emotions, or even share thoughts with another human being can be a genetic trait that is environmentally reinforced by the power person. And remember, there are three things that happen in order for a power person dynamic to become instilled in one's mind. It is usually an interaction between a parent and a child, a very early stage in one's life. And the three dynamics are that the power person has more power over the child than the child does. The power person, who should be functioning as a human being, as love, but because of the unresolved issues that they inherited and that they've experienced in their lives, they're not functioning as love. That's the second factor. And in that environment of the person with the power and not functioning as love, if the child perceives the circumstance as survival, then energetically they simply open their energy field. It's like they become like a sponge and just literally suck in every energy that's in the environment. And remember that as an energy being, there are two qualities of energy relative to your wholeness. There's that which lifts, integrates, and supports it. There's that which tears down, disintegrates, and destroys it. In Aramaic, the word for that tear down energy was called sin, an energy that's off the mark, an energy that doesn't belong within the system. So these kinds of dynamics pass from generation to generation, create negative health incomes, nightmares, failures of marriages, flashbacks, depression, anxiety. Literally, some research shows even to early death. And many times when people are living out of these dynamics, they'll say, or the culture will say, or the diagnosis will be, remember that word diagnostic. A dyad is two, an agnostic is someone who doesn't know. Diagnostic, be careful what you accept, because this whole process is based on mind energy. So oftentimes someone carrying around these traumas, they say they're suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But let's drop the D, because it's not a disorder at all. You know, if you get a thorn in your finger and you don't get the thorn out, what does your body do? It creates a little bit of gristle around it. Why? To protect the surrounding tissue so it doesn't become more damaged by the thorn. Well, these traumatic instances work the same way. That post-traumatic stress that people talk about is not a disorder. It's a coping mechanism. No, it's not the best thing to have that thorn and that piece of gristle around it in your finger. Get it out of there, yes. But if it's there, it's not a disorder. It's there to support you and keep you healthy to the greatest degree that it can. So all kinds of dynamics occur as a result of these inherited and environmentally reinforced traumas. Things like the need to caretake, the propensity to abuse, to run, escape, any or all of the power person pseudo solutions that we've covered over the last couple of days, those things can take over and run a person's life on automatic pilot. It's a powerful poem that someone shared with me many years ago, that in the Lord, in what the Aramaic Lord's Prayer speaks of, and what people call the Lord's Prayer, which actually is not a prayer at all. It's actually a set of instructions for how to live as a human being. It has the whole, what people call the Lord's Prayer. You remember they asked him how to pray. They did not ask him to say a prayer. He gave directions on how to pray. What does pray mean in Aramaic? It means to become the space where active present love shows up, to engage only in integrative energy. He gave them a set of instructions for that. And one of the instructions can properly be translated out of the Aramaic, speaking of that instruction set, can be translated as get us out of our habit mind. So here's a story that was written, or a poem that was written by a man named John Delemy. He says, I'm your constant companion. I'm your greatest helper or your heaviest burden. I will push you onward or drag you down to failure. I am completely at your command. Half the things you do, you might just as well turn over to me, and I will be able to do them quickly and correctly. I'm easily managed, and you must merely be firm with me. Show me exactly how you want something done, and after a few lessons, I will do it automatically. I am the servant of all great men, and alas, of all failures as well. Those who are great, I have made great. Those who are failures, I have made failures. I am not a machine, though I work with all the precision of a machine, plus the intelligence of a man and a woman. You may run me for profit or run me for ruin. It makes no difference to me. Take me, train me, be firm with me, and I will put the world at your feet. Be easy with me, and I will destroy you. Who am I? I am habit. Thank you, John Lemmy, for writing that because this is exactly what the non being mind, the mind of this body, carbon based memory is. It is a habit machine. It plays out whatever's in it. If your power person is always telling you, or your spouses, you'll oftentimes you'll spot this in a spouse, was always telling you what you did wrong, what you did bad, how stupid you were, how incompetent you were, how you don't deserve the space you take up, how you're dirty, how it's your fault I'm in pain. You ever get that message from your power person? Then the tendency will be to pass that message along as though it's true about the person you're with. If they're the kind of messages that came from your power person, be responsible for it. Undo your blockage of truth and stop it because it is a disease you inflict upon yourself. And if your partner's home for delivery, then they'll tend to share in that disease. Notice the power person dynamic got very old for you early in your life. Remember what it was like? Guess what? It's already old for your partner. It's time to take charge of your own habit machine. And every time, even the slightest bit of hostility or fear surfaces, to take charge of your mind, to recognize that it's there. Breathe into the tissue where that energy is stored. Apply the process of forgiveness. Soften, let go of resistance, and allow yourself to embrace that energy. Whenever and notice that if the person you're with has a tendency to say, well, wait a minute, look what you're, watch what happens if they do that. Do you hold your breath? Does some form of hostility or fear come up? Remember, that's what your power person used to do to control you. So people will fabricate according to the power person messages received. This is one of the things to understand about the perceptual mind, the mechanics of the mind. If you want to know where the emergency brake is in the car, different cars, different places. You got to know where it is to operate it. So one of the things about the human mind is that when you demand a particular construct from the mind, or you come to a conclusion and you tell your mind that you want to see only evidence consistent with that conclusion, then your mind will hallucinate facts, quote unquote. Recently in the culture, they become alternative facts that justify conclusions that are irrelevant to the actual circumstances, but match what has been triggered in the mind by the circumstance. The dynamic, I have to be right here, that person will hallucinate things being said, events happening that did not happen. But they do support the power person conclusion. That's the functioning purpose of the human mind, is to provide evidence. And when you recognize that Harvard research, I repeat this over and over and over again, so it's really embedded for everybody. They put somebody in the laboratory, they hooked them up to electrodes, they measure brain cell firings in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing. The max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. 9 bits of data out of 10,000 brain cells firing is nothing other than evidence. And the thing to know about the human mind is the only evidence it will ever show you is evidence of your own BS. Of course, that's belief system. That's what resonated in your mind when I said BS, right? Notice what realities people carry. If you need to hide, cover up real feelings, where your power person did, notice, just step back and observe. If your power person was always blaming you and telling you you're bad or wrong, then you'll tend to do the same thing to yourself. I'm bad and wrong for having these traits. The idea here isn't for anything other than self-correction. The mind will tend to go into self-blame if that's what the power person did. But here we're just inviting people to notice what your mind's doing. And do you really want to keep doing that to yourself and the people around you? And as you become aware, then the whole game changes. And we're here. The whole objective of this body of work is to support you in letting go of what, again, Carl Jung labeled as the greatest burden a child must bear, the unlived life of their parent and the corresponding unresolved wounds and traumas. The sole objective of this work is to come forward with a set of tools with which to undo and resolve the embedded power person dynamics of the generation. So that's what we're here for. And if you have any thoughts before I go back to the worksheet, we're up to step 14 on the power person worksheet. We've been doing this now, I think this is our 4th show on this topic. So if you haven't been with us and you want to go back, I think it was 4 days ago that we started the first one. If you want to go back and pick up those shows to get continuity, this worksheet is one that we only made available, only published for people who were part of the online codependence to interdependence, because it is extremely detailed. And it's the only worksheet that we've had in all these years that we have not published publicly, because you have to build brain cells around so much of it to make any sense of it. So we decided to do a series of shows where we could hand somebody those shows and say, here's the new, and I think it's up to 16 pages now. I've been doing some additional writing on it since we started doing this. And so it'll probably keep growing. But you can go back and get those shows and catch up with where we're going. And before I go into it, I had made the request that we stay on track with this power person dynamic and this pseudo solutions of the non-being mind. But before I actually go back to the worksheet, if anybody has been part of the shows as they're ongoing, or has anything specifically to inquire about or need support with in regard to where we're at with the worksheet and what I just shared with you, then before I start into the worksheet, it would be awesome if you pushed the call button and we had a conversation if you had anything that's on track with what it is that we're working with. I'm still editing this worksheet, and I know I've spoken to a couple of people about sending it out to them, but it's not quite ready to send it out yet. But I'll be doing that probably within the next day or so. So if anyone has a question or a thought based on the power person dynamic, based on the pseudo solutions of the non-being mind, as I've labeled them, push that call button. Let's have a conversation, or make a comment in the comment section. And it would be delightful to talk with you before I step into step 14. And it looks like we have no comments or hands up, so I'm going to head into step 14. This is, let's see, getting close to 2/3 the way through the worksheet. So the last thing we looked at is when with I'm doing a worksheet on a particular situation that happened, somewhat like the forgiveness process. So I started out with I've named myself I who am love, and I'm working with this power person dynamic. And so we've identified earlier in the worksheet, you identified the goal that you had. And so the objective in step 13 was to recognize the the goal that I had when I used a particular behavior. And we went through 15 different pseudo solutions, which are all behaviors that the carbon-based memory system prompts us to do and says, this will solve your problem. This will take care of it. This will make you a winner. Why? Because your power person did it to you when they won over you. But when your power person was doing that behavior to you and they won over you, did it ever feel like you won? The human being is not designed to win. The human being is designed to share their human lives, the active presence of love. This whole conflict, this whole competition game that the non-being mind shares is just crazy. I've advocated over the years when I've worked with teachers, for every dollar in this school system that's spent, for every minute that's spent in competitive sports, there should be a law that requires that the same number of minutes and the same number of dollars are spent in community effort, in working together, in discovering ourselves and each other as human beings and creating support for human life. That's where we truly become winners. So in step 13, we asked you to look at the goal you were holding, and then what did you use that behavior for? So the example might have been, or the example we used yesterday, my goal in using this behavior, whatever it was to get them to shut up, so I don't have to deal with my hurt, and I can feel safe. So when you're doing step 13, you'll see there's 2 or 3 places where you can fill those blanks in. My goal in doing this was, and behind each behavior that you do, you want to recognize that that behavior is communicating something. And oftentimes people are just doing it from rote memory. They're just repeating the traumatic methods of communicating where we can replace it. Part of this intensive, when we did it online, the codependence to interdependence, was the second part of it was a communication. We stepped into the tools of responsibility communication. So any form of pseudo solution behavior can be replaced with conscious communication, responsibility communication, rather than the whole game of projection communication, which basically says, of course, I'm a member of the one world universal original blame. This is your fault. So let me communicate about what's wrong with you. And I can see that we have a comment, and I don't know, something's dysfunctioning in the app, and I can't get to the comment. I apologize for that. I tried to open it, but it won't open. So I have no idea what it is. So looking at what this behavior was communicating, taking responsibility for it, looking inside myself on a different level. And that can be when you step into and tie that together with the responsibility communication tool from the workshop communication. Did you hear what I think I said? It's powerful. So in step 14, what emotions? I see again, we got a comment. Let me see if I can get to it. There's something not working properly in my app. I apologize. But
it was Merrick just saying hi and me saying hi back.
Oh, okay. A couple of hellos. Thank you. Hello, Merrick. Glad you guys are with us. Hope all is well in Mexico. So, step 14, what emotions surfaced in me when the power person that I named in step 3 played out this power person dynamic? So, I'm going to go back. I'm looking at a current event situation. In the early part of the worksheet, I've detailed this situation in step 3. Now, what I'm going to do, remember the opening of the worksheet starts with developing the skill to become the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feelings, the actor apart from the actions. This is one of the keys to putting an end to the replicate mind running your life, is being able to step back and observe yourself in operation. So step 14 looks at what emotions played out with my power person and how are those emotions similar to this event. So let's say the worksheet I'm working on is I've got fear going on. So what I want to do is become conscious of, if I have fear going on today and I'm under stress, there is a very high likelihood that that fear is based in a power person dynamic. That a fear-based response is something that's structured into carbon-based memory. It is not natural for us to have fear. Love is not made of fear. And when fear is in space, love is obliterated. That's when we function out of the non-being mind. That's where all the crazy stuff happens. The objective here is to begin to collapse these underlying dynamics so that love can come back to full expression within our own physiology at every moment, even in the most, concerning, upsetting, disturbing, painful situation. Gee, are there anything such things as painful, disturbing, upsetting situations? Well, yeah, if somebody punches you in the nose, it can be painful. But other than that, no situation can cause you pain. Nobody's ever been angry at what happened. But if in your family system there's anger, that anger can be projected into 1,000 different things. And if you are a member of that one world universal religion of blame, then you'll say, I'm angry because you. What we're looking to do, that's projection communication. You made me so angry. We're inviting people to actually grow up and become adults. Stop being like 3-year-olds that are going, nah, 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 look what you did to me, and actually grow into adulthood. Gee, when you did that, and this is part of our responsibility communication system, or the tools, when you did that, it brought up a lot of anger in me. And I realized that I have this disproportionate anger response more often than necessary. Why? So I'm noticing that in the situation today. Now in step 14, I'm going to look at how do the emotions I'm experiencing now fit with my power person dynamic? Oh, geez, I can remember walking away 1,000 times, enraged. So just notice, detail it. And remember again, this whole worksheet can function like a mind shifter. Remember, our tool, Mind Shifter, is a thought about an issue in your life around which you have negative thoughts. It's the opportunity to process, surface, and release the negative thoughts. This whole worksheet can function as a mind shifter. It can expose to you what kinds of things you've hidden from yourself. So for someone who realizes that the emotions that surfaced in this situation matched what went on when I was 5 years of age, then I recognize that, oh, I'm going to do some worksheets around my anger when I was 5. So each step along the way, you can take it out as you do with the mind shifter and look at what tools. Oh, here's a place where we really step into and use that responsibility communication tool. Then step 15, what I'm going to look at, I've identified the emotions in step 14. Now once again, I'm going to grow into adulthood and take responsibility for those emotions. And I'm going to go to another level. I'm going to stretch myself to another level. I'm going to begin to observe the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from I'm going to observe where I'm experiencing this in my body, in my energy field. So I want to become conscious of what's the emotion, And on our website, Jeannie's posted a feeling wheel. If emotional words are difficult for you, if your power person had difficulty expressing emotion, chances are you do too. That can become a habit. So the wheel can be helpful. We've actually got there's a really good series of books for kids. Um, hmm, thinking the title of it. Anyway, they go into emotions, and Ari just loves to read those books. We've got a chart on the wall. It's probably got, oh, I don't know, I've never counted, probably 100 different faces with all kinds of expressions and the words under the chart for what those emotions are. And it's fun. I came a couple months ago. I came home and Ari was sitting in front of that chart, and she said, "Papa, what are you feeling? How are you feeling?" And she drew, actually, the picture's on the wall here. She drew what I shared with her about what I was feeling. So, but that's not something that our culture generally does. Just most times it's the authoritarian, shut up, sit down, don't make a sound, rather than, oh, you're feeling something, sweetie? Come here, talk to me about it. What's going on? What's happening? And then once one identifies the emotion, step 15, the next step is, now, instead of holding to the projection that that emotion is caused by someone else, what's the thought in you? What do you have to think in order to feel that way? Literally, mind energy. Again, the opening words in the book of John are not, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. This is not about theology. This is about physics. This is about physiology. This is about psychology. This is about genetics. This teaching from the first century Aramaic language is simply about where you live. And so you're feeling something. When you engage in a thought, mind energy becomes flesh, according to those opening words in the book of John. And what they're showing in the cell biologist laboratory, you think a thought creates a molecule, an actual neuropeptide, and it circulates around the structure till it finds a cell with a receptor site. It lands on the receptor site, integrates itself into the cell. And if we were looking from inside the cell, when that neuropeptide lands on it, we'd say there's chemistry. That's this, the mind energy, literally the thought, is becoming physiology. And when that my offering is that when, and there's nobody that I know of that has researched this, that there's any actual, backup for it. So I'll own that. But here's my offering. When you think a thought, that neuropeptide lands on the cell. And when it lands on the cell warns you about what the neuropeptide's doing to you. If there's upset, if there's pain and there's trauma, it's because you're engaging in mind energy that is becoming your diseased flesh. So a lot of people play the emotional world, but they don't ever want to be responsible. No, it's all somebody else's fault. The invitation here in step 15 is, if I've got an emotion going on, rather than puking on the person in front of me and blaming them like my power person puked on me and blamed me, I want to stop. I want to take a breath, and I want to own, oh, there's a thought moving in me that my physiology is warning me is becoming my flesh. So what's the thought behind this emotion? And then, so you're building awareness of what's going on in your own form and your own nervous system. Where are you feeling it? Is it happening in your calf? Is it happening in your gut? Is it happening in your neck? Where in your nervous system are you feeling the impact of this thought that you're thinking? And as you do that, you'll start changing your thoughts really fast. If you come out of a family system that has lots of hostility and fear and is always puking that on somebody, you start to realize that you're doing this to yourself. Then step 16 You want to identify any fear or hostility-based messages that you've given to others or to yourself in order to achieve the goals you have. I.e., if, let's say the goal is to be in control. Let's say one was brought up with an intensely abusive power person, then the kinds of goals that would tend to run that person would be goals like, I need to be in control, or I'm going to avoid this situation, or I need to distract others from this situation. I need to deflect this energy. I don't want to look at this. So what you want to do in step 16 is identify any message that you've given to others based in hostility or fear in order to achieve that goal. So it might be something like, I'm going to force somebody or threaten people into being silent in order that I don't have to look at what's going on inside of me. So that might be the type of dynamic that played out from the power person. Or I'm going to leave you if, always holding that threat. Then you know that, I mean, if you watch a person under stress, when ultra stressed, and you watch their behavior, you know with a certainty, with no doubt whatsoever, you know that that was what the power person did to them that they hated the most. Period. Now, when you recognize that and you start watching your own automatic decision system kick in and the replicate mind just spit things out, here's how you become conscious of the behaviors that are so on automatic pilot that people don't even know they did it. I mean, literally have no awareness and no recall of those habit patterns that come into play. So in step 16, you've identified any kind of fear or hostility based message, either that you give to yourself repeatedly, terrorizing yourself with your own thoughts, or terrorizing others in order to avoid the power person dynamic that's operating within you. And then looking at those messages in step 16, many of them are going to be literally following the exact word patterns of the power person. So in step 17, you take each of the messages, don't make me look, or I'll leave you if. And then in 17, you write about when your power person said that to you. When did your power person say, threaten you with leaving? If that's something in step 16 that you've done, and begin to use that kind of, again, like a mind shifter, to go into the part of your mind that's in need of healing. And any part of your mind that holds any form of hostility or fear means that there's an energetic dynamic there that either plays out through the automatic decision system and you blame everybody in the world for it, or when it comes up, you've developed enough self-awareness to be able to go, oh, geez, look at this. Oh, my stress is building. That person is not fulfilling my goal, and I'm ready to lash out at them. What's the word pattern that I'm serving out with this lashing out? And then in step 17, see if you can recall when your power person used that same word pattern, that same thought pattern. Remember, under stress, ultra stressed, everybody, unless they've resolved this dynamic in themselves, Everybody does what their power person did to them that they hated the most, or they're at least inclined to do it. They may have enough self-control not to do it. Remember, we were in Fort Lauderdale, no, probably 15 years ago now, and there was a gentleman there who had ran an AA program, and he had a large online presence with the AA programs. And I don't remember now, somebody introduced us to him, and we were invited to go and do this codependence workshop, which I did. And when I talked about the power person dynamic and the third level of stress, people do what their power person did them they hated the most. This guy became a little bit irate with me. I was like, well, that is just not true, Michael, because I know it's not true because when I was a kid, my father mercilessly beat me just about every day of my childhood. And I have a son and I have never hit my son. And I acknowledged him for having the self-control to not do that. But then I asked him, how much time do you spend having to control your fists? And it was like I'd slapped him in the face. It's like, oh my God, that's my whole life, restraining myself from hitting people. Well, there's your power person dynamic, bud. Maybe you've got enough self-control to not do it, but there it is. Notice what it's done to you physiology. Notice how it tears you up trying to control that. You want to get in there with forgiveness and remove those energetic dynamics. Part of doing that is going to be step 17. Look at the messages you're conveying to others through your behavior or through your actual words, and look at when those messages were conveyed to you by your power person. And then step 18, what in general did I perceive my power person's needs to be? So remember the needs list we talked about earlier in the worksheet? There's a whole list of needs. So check out what your power person's needs were. And at least how you perceived them. Just give me a second. I'm making a note here. So look at what you perceived your power person's needs to be and how those needs impacted you. And one of the reasons for looking at least what you perceive to be your power person's needs, they may have or may not have been, it may have all been projection. But then in step 19, what we're going to invite you to do is to look at what your power person did to get those needs met. And ask yourself the question, was my power person's behavior just and fair? If, as is too often the case, your power person's needs, or pardon me, way of getting the needs met was not just and fair, then notice how your behavior when you're under stress is not just and fair. You want to see a powerful portrayal of this. There's a powerful film out there called I Can Only Imagine. It's a true story. It's the name of a song, actually. It was written by a Christian songwriter. And the movie goes through his life. I mean, it's a powerful place to breathe, extremely abusive and fairly graphic until he leaves and goes off and becomes, music was always his escape. And he writes this really powerful song. And he's traveled with church bands. He's been in churches. He's been away from his power person for years, but he hasn't healed a darn thing until he comes home. And his power person's been listening, and his power person's starting to make some changes. And he gets to see exactly how he's played into that. Actually, as I think about it, the music in it's powerful too. It's a really powerful film. It's a place where you want to have worksheets there, and it's a place where you want to be, maybe have yourself a little sign to remind you to breathe because some of it gets pretty intense, but it's powerful. But just and fair, in the Aramaic Beatitudes, one of the Beatitudes has in it as a requirement just and fair behavior between people. Because when the power person was functioning out of hostility or fear, they lost the capacity to be just and fair. And when the stress is up and the chips are down, anybody who is subjected to that will tend to fall out of harmony with just and fair behavior. And so just becoming conscious of that, as one becomes cognizant, then one can begin to correct that part of their own mind. So once you've looked at a power person behavior and then, the way that your power person got their needs met or a particular need met, was that method just or fair? And then why or why not? Why did you see it as being unjust and unfair? And the reason for asking that question is because the replicant mind absorbs those things and tends to play them out. So step 20 goes to the next level. And have I ever exhibited any needs similar to my power person in my life? And what do I do to get my needs met? And is it just and fair? If it is or it is not, then why is it just and fair or why isn't it? And as you start to remember, the whole objective here is to break down these thought complexes. I mean, we have no way of knowing. In order for the mind to produce the world that we think we see through our eyes, which is not out there, but is literally a hologram generated by the brain, nobody knows how many millions, perhaps trillions of brain cells have to fire. And what we're looking to do is to break down each complex of thought that can draw us into some form of hostility or fear. And those things that can draw us into hostility or fear literally are stored somewhere in tissue and are creating diseases in that tissue. That's why we're bringing in looking at the nervous system, being aware of what's moving. So we're doing this on a physiological level, a mental, an emotional level, all the while breathing, doing the best work we can to be fully conscious. And I see someone else has put a comment into the comment bar, and I apologize, but there's something going on with the app on my end, and I cannot get into the comments. So I apologize. I can't respond to them. So again, what did my power person do to get their need met? Have I ever exhibited any needs similar to my power person? And what do I do to get my needs met? And are my behaviors just and fair? It may be time to start adjusting some of those, especially to the people closest to us, because they're the ones that the habitual patterns tend to play out with. Then we're going to come from a totally different perspective. Now we're going to go to the other side of the table and really investigate what did I think and feel I had to do to meet my power person needs. Were my actions based in love or fear and hostility? Were they just and fair? Responses. My power person had needs. There was a stress, and I felt I needed to fulfill their needs. What actions did I do? Were my actions based on love or fear and hostility? were my actions just and fair? If not, there's my next worksheet. There's the next piece of work that I want to do as I go in and clean up my own mind. Again, being the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feelings, the actor apart from the actions. And then into step 3. Did my power person punish me? Did my power person do any behaviors that were punishing? And if so, what did they do? What kind of punishment did they engage in? And just notice what's happening with your breath. Just observe what's going on in your body as you contemplate those things. And then go and take a look at step 7. In step 6, we listed 75 different behaviors, actually 75 plus different behaviors. And so look at those behaviors, look at the things you did to cope with the stresses in your mind, and bring them down to this step. And of course, make sure that your breath is in operation. And I hope we've stirred some things for you. Hope we've given you some insight into how to use the tools to cope with those things. And we'll look forward to sharing more with you tomorrow. Appreciate you joining us. Create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. And once again, I apologize. I can't get into, I see there's a caller with a hand up, but I can't get into something going on with the app that I can't get into the caller or the comments. So my apology. I can't even see who it is that's calling. So in the meantime, have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Thanks for joining us. And if this show is making sense for you, pass it on to somebody.